Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com, and hey, it's time for early office hours. Hey, and check out Delta CX if you're interested in our CX and UX work. So, once a month, I do 2 office hours in one day to accommodate other time zones. So, good morning. It is 10 in the morning here in Italy. I'm hoping to be seeing people from Asia and Far Eastern Europe and India and Australia, New Zealand. So hopefully, and of course here in Western Europe and Africa. So this is for everybody, but it's optional. And we'll be doing this again in 8.5 hours, though we'll have a guest today. John N.A. Brown will be back to answer more of your questions at our usual time of 6:30 p.m. Italy time. Of course, thanks as always to, hey Emma, thanks as always to the people donating to the channel, totally optional but always appreciated, keeps me in streaming software and chocolate chips. And, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I want to try to get this right in Polish. Someone help me with this one. Łukasz? How am I doing? Yes? No? Help! Give me some American phonetics, please. Good morning, everybody. I am having my breakfast shake, and I am here to answer any questions you have about CX or UX. This is kind of my free mentoring time, and you can ask absolutely anything, and it will be answered for free. So this is your big chance. Łukasz, I did it. I was pretty close. Hello, Shaida from Germany. Shaida. And of course, everybody, it's Manuel's birthday today. Happy birthday, Manuel. We'll probably be saying that in 8.5 hours at our later show. So yeah, this is really just office hours. It's me taking your questions. I don't see any questions coming in yet, but let me check. You can ask them here in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat. You can see it up on the screen. And you can also ask anonymously. If you go to deltacx.com/links, there is a way to ask your questions anonymously. And that way I'm not yelling out your name just in case you want to say something about your current job. So I'm going to get that screen open so I can grab any questions from that system. But other than that, we all want to know what Manuel is doing for his birthday. Anything special? Will there be cake? Will there be ice cream? I think I saw that you had a MacBook Pro on your list. I don't know why. I love Windows and the computers are less expensive, but may you get all the things on your list. So yeah, until someone has a question, this is just a live stream of me drinking a shake. It's really, at least it's worth what y'all paid. But seriously, if you have any questions or you want my opinion on anything, this is the time. Ooh, exciting. Just checking I'm not missing anything here. Sometimes people say, you didn't answer my question. I go, what? I didn't see a question. Okay, we do have a question. Let's copy and paste this, and we save all the questions, and they end up in the YouTube description, so you can check later and see what the heck we were talking about. All right, let's paste this one in. Okay, so thanks. These are great questions. So Łukasz is asking, how do you envision the UX job market in the recent months or quarter? I've read it's declining. What do you see? I would have to agree. What tends to happen in economic drops or economic fear times is UX is very often among the first people to be cut. That usually means layoffs in UX. Hey, Abdul Bazit. That usually means layoffs in UX. It usually means jobs are not opened, or jobs that were opened are closed. The budget is sometimes taken away. I had one leader tell me that he doesn't think he'll be able to hire for 12 to 18 months because of budgets and the economy and economic fears. So I would say that UX was already a bit of a tough job market, especially for newbies. For newbies, it's nearly impossible. For experienced people, it's tough but not impossible. Good, man. Well, do something special for yourself. Yes, I do think that an already tough job market always seems to shrink in these tough times. We saw that at the start of the pandemic. In spring, what was spring above the equator in 2020, when everyone freaked out about the pandemic and started to realize this was not going to be a 1 or 2 month thing, a lot of UX jobs got cut. My LinkedIn feed was full of people announcing that they'd been laid off or their contract ended early. And I've got a question coming up too about Figma. We'll add that to the list. We'll get to that next. So yes, I do see an already tight UX job market declining right now. It's not good news, but I see other jobs are struggling from the economy as well. I saw in my if I go by my own LinkedIn feed, which obviously is not a great statistically significant sample size, but I see a lot of HR and recruiter people being fired from their jobs or laid off because companies think they're not going to hire in the next X months, maybe even a year. So why do we need all these recruiters? So that's what I'm seeing. I don't have good news. I don't have a lot of great advice here. The only thing that you can do is if you are experienced in UX and you can show at least a couple of years of experience, you'll probably find another job. But it's going to be bigger competition out there. If you are not experienced in UX and you are trying to find that first job, it's going to be even worse than an already bad situation. So that is what I see. And from what I'm hearing from some leaders, like I said, some leaders have said to me, I don't think I'm going to be able to hire for a year. And that's obviously going to affect everybody. So yeah, it's usually a detailed answer here. Welcome to the show. So again, I don't have great news, but that's what I see. So there you go. And Shaida, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce you, said, what do you think about the recent news about Figma? What should we do? So we did a live stream last week when the news came out. We have a new playlist called Breaking News, and we did a live stream to get everybody talking about it. And I think right now there's just a lot of fears and uncertainty. If you love Figma, keep using Figma. There's no reason to dump Figma right now. There's no emergency. It hasn't died. They're not killing it this week. If Adobe does anything with Figma that we won't love, it's probably going to be next year or the year after. Very often in these mergers or acquisitions where companies buy each other, they usually keep everything pretty much the same for sometimes a year or two. Now that's just typical, but that doesn't mean it'll happen here. That's typically what happens because they part of the reason they bought the company was to have all of the users, the paying ones and the not paying ones. And I read somewhere that Figma has something like 5 million users. That's 5 million people Adobe wants in their system. They don't want to alienate you. So they'll probably keep things the same for at least a little while. And then down the road, you'll start to see changes. You might see that it's called Adobe Figma. You might see that it's part of the Creative Cloud subscription and that they expect you to pay through that and not through Figma directly. You might see changes to the software. You might see people from Figma or Adobe XD being laid off or fired because they don't need all the workers on both teams. So I think if we do see something, it's usually not right away. If you love Figma, use Figma. If you are a plan ahead type of person, then you want to start to get to know some of the other tools that are out there. There aren't a lot of great choices. Some people in our community are looking at PenPot, and someone told me to look at Lunacy, which I haven't done yet. And of course, I'm a super fan of Axure, not sponsored. I pay them, they don't pay me. And we did an entire show yesterday over on the YouTube channel, me explaining some of the things Axure can do and why I believe it's better than Figma, even if Figma stayed the same. So come on over to the YouTube channel, subscribe over here. It's Delta CX, and you can just go to YouTube and look for Delta CX. And yesterday's show was called Can Axure Do That? Because I get a lot of questions like, I don't know if I want to bother learning Axure. It can be a little complicated to learn. Can it even do what I want? And the answer is mostly yes, and it does a lot more than Figma. So I'm suggesting that people at least check out Axure. It does not have a free version the way Figma has. Axure is paid after a free trial, and it's not cheap. So it's not going to be the best option for everybody, but it is an option. And it's my option. So that is my preferred tool. I am not a Figma user. I don't have a license. I was never a Sketch user, partially because I'm on Windows, and Sketch gave the middle finger to Windows users until they moved to the cloud. So that is my story. But yeah, keep the questions coming. This is Office Hours, Ask Me Anything, and I'm here to be a mentor and answer questions for people. Manuel said, I'm currently working on my portfolio, but I can't remember some stuff while writing the case study. I'm learning to document my process for new projects now. Yeah, this is like a question in disguise. And I think the question here is, how do I make sure later I'm not relying on my memory? And certainly, Manuel, you've learned that you don't want to rely on your memory for stuff when it comes to UX and research and things like that. So what I recommend for people, especially if they find that their memory is sometimes a little unreliable, or like later you go, oh wait, what did I do and why did I do that? You just have to keep better documentation as you go. Prepare your future self for success. And while you're doing a project, take your screenshots and blur out what you have to blur out, or make it anonymous, but take your screenshots. Leave notes for yourself. I did this because of this. I made this decision here because of this. This was a question I asked myself at this point of the project. Just keep that for yourself. It could be as simple as putting these things into a Google Doc, which should cost you nothing. So hi from Pakistan. Hi, Muhammad. And so, yeah, definitely set up your future self for success. Even people with great memories sometimes finish a project and then go, what did I do and why did I do that? So you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong preparing your future self. And I'm just going to copy and paste our next question from Joni. Yoni? I'm never too sure. Sorry, I'm so bad with everybody's names, so I apologize. I have bad name karma. It will get me. Yeah, that I always tell people another great reason for that is if you build your portfolio case study as the project goes, not only do you have the benefit of remembering what you're doing and why, but very often at the end of a project, people feel like, ooh, that's over. And then it's like, oh no, I have to go back through all of that in my head again and now make a case study. Hi, Hamed. And the problem is people feel demotivated. So if you can build it as you go, it's really so much of a better way to go. All right, let's see our next question, which is still on the screen, but I'm going to put it over here on the other side because the other ones go away after a minute. Hi, I'm taking the Google UX certificate with no prior experience related to the field. Okay, welcome. What would you suggest I do in regards to approaching my job search once the certificate is done? Oh, good morning. Another name I'm going to shoot for, Kamolidine. How did I do? Someone help me. Please write phonetic things. Okay, so Joni or Yoni, I would probably not search for a job after doing a Google UX certificate. The UX certificate, while it is easy to get and relatively inexpensive, the problem is that many UX experts do not consider it to be a strong program. Many people do not consider it to make you job ready. And ultimately, these are the stories that your portfolio tells us. I've seen many portfolios after the Google UX course, and it really tells the story of someone who just started learning UX, just the very surface of the iceberg. Unfortunately, that person is probably not job ready, especially in such a highly competitive field. For example, are you competing against Wukash, who has a PhD? So I don't know. I didn't check Wukash's LinkedIn. Oh, cool. Thank you, Kamolidin. So I'm going to say Joni. I apologize if it's not Joni. I'm bad at names. I'm so sorry. So, hey, friendly new person, I probably wouldn't apply for jobs just yet. Remember, you are competing against 560,000 people who are taking the Google UX course, and you all have the smallest slice of preliminary information. You probably don't yet know what you're doing or why you're doing it. I really need to make a graphic, let me write this down, out of Bloom's taxonomy. Who's familiar with Bloom's taxonomy? And Bloom's taxonomy is a neat triangle that we can look at. Oh, good. I'm going to go with Joni. Thank you. Bloom's taxonomy is a neat triangle that helps remind us of different stages of learning and different stages of being able to be good at or proficient in something. Oh, Wukash, that's a follow-up question. We will get that in next. Please hold. And so what I find is that when it comes to the Google UX course, I'm not even sure people are at the lowest level of the triangle of Bloom's taxonomy. That's how concerned I am about the course. I do feel that the Google UX course is mostly teaching people the wrong things in the wrong ways. You also don't have good instructor feedback. At least if you take a piano lesson with a piano expert, you get feedback from the piano teacher on what you're doing right or wrong and how you can improve your technique. In the Google UX course, it's peer reviewed, where other newbies like you with no knowledge and no experience are going to tell you what you're doing right or wrong. I have a PhD, not recommending anyone. We've covered that on the show too. So I think the best thing that you can do, because here on the show we like to be low ego action heroes, is to put that low ego into action and say, I probably am just scratching the surface of UX. I need to learn more. I need to make sure I am better skilled, more proficient. So unfortunately, despite some of the promises that you hear, the UX courses, the UX boot camps, even some UX degrees, you are unlikely to get a job right after them. Now, even if people disagreed with me and said, no, the Google UX course is great, Debbie is wrong, we still have a problem that's blocking you from that first job. And that is, most entry-level jobs in UX are asking for 1-2 years of experience. So it's not even a matter of what course should I be taking. If you don't have real work experience, it's hard to get a job. Now, this is obviously a snake eating its tail. How can you get a job if you can't get a job? Yes, the whole system is broken right now. So I've been telling people, if UX is not burning in your heart, maybe stop and think about what is burning in your heart and what you would really love to work in, because UX is a high conflict, difficult job. I know a lot of courses make it seem like, hey, just make some sticky notes and run some fun exercises and you're going to be an innovator. It's not like that at all. It's just not. We've done a number of shows here on the YouTube channel about that. We've done a number of panel discussions of what working in UX is really like. It's high conflict. We get bossed around a lot. We get told what to do in bad ways. We're constantly disrespected and misunderstood. We're typically having to fight for why we were even hired. And everybody at the company thinks they know how to do UX as well as we do, especially if they already took something like the Google UX course. It is a bad time to try to work in UX. If it is not running through your blood and burning in your heart, it's probably better for you to find what is. You'll be happier because UX is not what a lot of these courses and boot camps are selling it as. So even if I said to you, here's the course you should take, I know people with master's degrees who can't find a job. So it's not like if you only take the right course, you're going to get that job. It really comes down to education, practice, and mentorship or coaching. Somebody should be an expert, not a random from your course. An expert should be looking at your work and going, since I'm an expert in research, I can tell you where your research plan is incorrect. Since I'm an expert in design, here's where I can tell you where your wireframes just weren't quite right. Now, on our Monday shows, I tried to teach some of that. So you can come to YouTube and you can find a playlist called Think Out Loud. And that's where I tried to teach research planning and some design. And I think we have 24 episodes of that in the can, and they're an hour each. That's 24 hours of free lessons. Over on the YouTube channel, we have a playlist called Micro Lessons. I think we have over 30 lessons in there. Many of them are research, some of them are design. That's 30 hours of free instruction that you can have. And I'm not selling you anything. It's not like, ooh, watch my video and then pay to do my whatever. I don't have a pay to do my whatever. Manuel says, yeah, learning and UX, not easy. Bootcamp makes it seem like it's easy. They're just trying to make money. It's true. So again, it's not about what is the right course that you can take. There's lots of places to get UX education. Some of the best education still comes from books. I tell everybody to read, and I really should make a graphic of this too, because I recommend it so much. The Information Architecture book, which has a polar bear on the cover. Let's write that down. I got to make a bunch of graphics for the show. Information Architecture for the Web and Beyond, I believe the 4th edition from 2015-2016. It's got a polar bear on the cover. It's a very long book, almost as long as my Delta CX book, which I don't recommend you read. It's not for newbies. Information architecture is something everybody should know how to do. And I don't mean I just read the book. I mean read it, understand it, and know how to put it into play. So remember, if you were to, let's say you were to go on a job interview with the level of knowledge the Google course has given you. Let's say I ask you, Wukash will get your question up and we'll address these after this one. I really want to go deep on this one because people are surprised to hear that I don't like the Google course and that I don't think it's going to get you where you want to go. Let's say I get you in an interview and I say, looks like from your Google coursework, you only interviewed 4 people. Why only 4? And what's the correct number? I need a cricket sound for the show. Cricket sound. Oh, I'm going to go on a show spree. Graphics and sounds. Yeah, cricket, cricket, cricket. Do you know the answer to that? If I say, why'd you make an empathy map and how would your project have been different if you didn't make an empathy map? I need a ticking clock sound. Tick, 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 tick. You know, the pressure is on. You know, a lot of UX work is about why did we make a certain decision and do we understand what some of the best practices are? So these are some of the things that you might be asked to explain in an interview. Sometimes an interview is really just about process and collaboration. Hey, Joni, tell me more about your UX process. What's your answer? Do you have an answer? Do you understand different processes? Oops, sweating. Yeah. Do you understand different UX processes? If I ask you, have you used user-centered design? And you go, what's that? I go, oh, yikes. You know, that's pretty much the most common thing. Everything else you've heard about is a derivative of it. Double diamond is a derivative. Design thinking is a shitty derivative. So these are some of the questions you might get asked. You might get asked, how do you work with product managers and engineers? You're going to go, oh, I haven't done real work yet. And again, that's okay. You haven't done real work yet, but it means that there is still a road to that job. And Afzal's working on a long question. We'll answer those after the questions from Wukash. So, Joni, I know it's not the best news, and it's not, and it probably still leaves you with a little bit of, yeah, but now what do I do? Unfortunately, to me, the best thing you can do is keep learning from as many sources as you can. Practice doing the work, but get a mentor or coach who is an expert and can look it over. Don't ask a UI designer to look at your research work. That's not their expertise. These aren't interchangeable. Don't ask a UX designer to look at your research work. I'm sorry, I accidentally muted my microphone. I don't know how I did that. Anyway, I was saying, sorry about that. I accidentally muted and I didn't notice. I was saying that Wukash's story is fantastic. It's great, and it's a great example of what's really going on out there. That Google claims you don't need education and whatever, but remember, in order for you to show up to a job with no education, that job has to be willing to train you, and most jobs are not willing to train you. They want to take the person who is already trained, already experienced, and just drop them into place. So be careful. Yeah, sorry about that. I muted my own mic by mistake. I messed it up. All right, let's take a look at some of Wukash's questions from some minutes ago. I was wondering about people in transition. In my case, I changed from academia to UX research. I want to develop certain skills, especially quantitative and UX tailored versions of methods. I was looking for courses online, but most are very basic. At the same time, I haven't been through UX metrics and UX quant tools and analysis. I was working more on SPSS, and in my job now, Excel is enough, but I didn't work on it with stats too much. Do you have any hints or suggestions on what I can do to practice? Yeah, possibly. Let's also grab Emma's question and add that to the end of the list. Emma, you're a few questions away, so please be patient. And I need to copy paste the second half of Afzal's question. All right, I think I got everything. One woman show, everybody. Okay, so quant is not my expertise, so I'm going to have limited advice here. I also don't know of a great course that is that focuses on those types of things, like the really statistical quant stuff. I would think you had to do that for your PhD. Did you have to do statistics and quant and standard deviation? But I have to admit, I have not seen a great UX quant course. For tools and analysis, I am using Alchemer, hashtag not sponsored. ALCHEMER. Basically, they're a competitor to things like SurveyMonkey, and it's a survey tool. But they've got some of, especially at the highest tier, they have some of these analytics built in. That being said, it's really expensive. I'm definitely overpaying. But you know, that will do it. So yeah, unfortunately, while I can talk about metrics and some of the things we should measure to prove ROI and to prove our outcomes, I am not a quant specialist, and I haven't seen any good quant courses go by. We should probably get a quant specialist on here. So yeah, we'll have to look at that. Sorry, I don't have a great answer, but that's the fun of a live show. Sometimes I don't have the answer, so I apologize that I'm not as helpful there as I probably should be. And you had a follow-up question about portfolios. What do you do? What if you do a lot of projects? Should we record all of them? This comes up as a similar problem with an academic CV. It grows and grows. What do you find important to record or expand more? So for a portfolio, to me, you are trying to show your skills and abilities. And so if you have a bunch of projects that were pretty much quite similar, things being done the same ways, I don't think you have to show all of them unless you're trying to show that you worked maybe for different industries. Like, here's one I did for the food industry, and here's one I did for an HR company. Okay, it's a little different because of the nature of the business. But otherwise, if they're really that similar, here's my dog. I hope you didn't steal Leia's bone again. She stole the neighbor dog's bone this morning. I caught her. No thanks, Ukash. So I think that a good portfolio shows what is your range. What are you capable of doing? So are you trying to show qual research, quant research? Are you trying to show interviews, observational or ethnographic or contextual inquiry? Are you trying to show that you did a diary study, card sorting, tree testing, evaluative research? So ultimately, I would put enough stuff in a portfolio to show that range so that you can say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Check out my portfolio. You'll get a good idea of what I have done and currently can do. If someone is trying to span research and design, then I would expect some projects where either those were done separately or done together. So I think if you've done very similar projects over and over, like I can't tell you how many times I worked on like an insurance website, I might only put one of those in my portfolio, whatever I think was the best or the most complete or the one that had really interesting outcomes or interesting process, because you don't need to see 4 insurance websites. So I would say go for range and anything that shows off different capabilities or skills that you have. Also remember that a typical hiring manager might only look at your portfolio for 90 seconds. So you've got to do what you can to tell your story in a very short amount of time. So I don't need 12 projects if really 3 tell me your story. Also see episode 148 here on the YouTube channel, where I went through some of the things I've seen in portfolios that I think are good and bad ideas. Lots of portfolio advice in episode 148. You can just come to the YouTube channel and come to YouTube and type Delta CX 148. It'll come right up. So there's that. And of course, if you want to join our Slack or Discord, which are completely free, all of the links you could want about this show are here. Our calendar of events, our communities, how you can send questions in, all of that is there. Okay, looks like I haven't missed anonymous questions. They're not coming in today. So that's cool. And okay, let's go to our next question. Copy, paste, copy, paste. Okay, here's Afzal's question, and it says, what differentiates the market research that UXers do in the discovery phase than what marketers do by themselves, and what data analysts do by observing real-time behavioral data and the kind of data we're looking for once the app is up and running? Are we interfering in their work at these stages? Okay, so I hear this question as, what is the difference between market research, UX research, and some of the data and analytics that we especially use when we've released a new product, feature, service, and we're trying to track maybe how it's going. If you have 3 separate teams or departments who each specialize in those, yeah, get out of other people's specialty. You don't want them to try to do your UX research work. You get out of their work unless you are specifically being required to do it. I don't like to see people step on each other's toes and do each other's work. It's just conflict and work problems and sometimes power struggles. So if your company has market researchers that do that, UX researchers who do that, and data and analytics people who do that, I say keep those specialties separate and respect them. If you have overlap, that's a whole other story. But let's talk about the different things that these people normally focus on and what makes them different. So market research is typically, is there a customer group that might want this idea we're thinking about? Now, that's not the only type of market research there is. It could be, is there an audience for this idea we're thinking of doing? I saw market research where it was learning what imagery people associate with joy so that when the company did some marketing and advertising, they could make sure to use imagery that really said joy to people. So this is some stuff that typically falls into market research, trying to take a look at audiences and predict what they're going to respond well to, whether we're predicting their response to advertising, or we're predicting their response to something our company might offer, or we're trying to figure out if how much they think they would pay for it. These are all kind of future predictions. So a lot of market research, not all of it, tends to be, can we figure out now what people might do or respond to in the future? I just want to make a quick note because I like that. I just said that and I like it and I want to write it down. I'm going to write that down. All right, thanks to me for coming up with that. Okay, so that tends to be market research. Now, market research usually isn't what UX research is doing, especially in the generative world. Very often, we are looking for behaviors and tasks. We're trying to figure out who people are and how they think and how they do things now. We typically don't ask them what they might do in the future. We know that people are bad at predicting what they might do in the future. You didn't know what you were going to do this month, 3 months ago, especially because a lot of us didn't know the economy was going to fall apart. We had all kinds of dreams of getting that first job, and now that looks a little bit messier now that so many people are being laid off. It's really hard to predict the future, so UX typically doesn't ask people, would you buy this? Would you like this idea? Would you pay this money for this thing? We're typically just trying to get to know people's habits, behaviors, motivations, tasks, processes, workarounds, tools, knowledge, collaborators, decision-making, all kinds of stuff that really circle around behaviors. All of these are kind of subsets of behaviors. What choices people make has to do with their behaviors. What's important to them could tie back to behaviors and perceptions. So that's typically where UX research lives. We're going to give the company what I like to call customer intelligence. We're not telling you what the market is. We're not going, well, 90 million Americans have a pet, so wow, that's 90 million people who could buy our pet thing. Whatever. That's a bit of a vanity metric. We don't know if those people will buy or not. But we can talk to 30 American pet owners and learn how they do this now. What do they buy their pet now from this type of thing? How does that work for the pet? Is the pet happy? Are you happy, Olivia? Good. Now that you stole the other dog's bone. So these are some of the things that UX is looking at. Tell me as I'm going if this is making sense and if this is helpful and if I'm on the right track for your question, because it got very quiet in the chat room and I just want to make sure I'm going in the right direction. And then Data and analytics are things that we can measure with numbers. Did people click on a button? Did they move from this screen to this screen? Sometimes we call that the funnel, as people move through a process and get closer to buying or becoming our customer. Did people do a thing? How many of them did the thing? How often do they do the thing? But we don't know a lot about why. We don't know what's going right or what's going wrong. We don't know if people are happy. Cool. Hi, Prachi. So data and analytics are great, and they're part of the puzzle of evidence and customer intelligence, but they usually don't tell us who, what, where, why, how. They mostly tell us how many, how often, or some things that we don't need to ask people, like what size screen do you use? We don't have to ask people that because we have data and analytics that tell us what percentage of people are coming to our site or app with a certain size screen. Prachi says UX researchers are frequently requested to predict behavior here in India. It's everywhere. People really misunderstand UX research and market research, and they think that if we can ask people, will you buy a thing, then that's what's going to happen. But you know, the interesting thing is, and I should really write this down too, because I'm coming up with ideas today. Thanks to all of you for being here. Do we ever go back and check? I'm going to type this as I say it. How many people who said they would do a thing last time ended up doing the thing? I'm going to write that down. I mean, really, let's say last year we ran a survey saying if we built this thing, would you use it? 58% said yes. 2,000 people said yes. And then we built it. Did those people show up? Did they use it? Did they pay for it? Did we get 2,000? How long did it take us to get to 2,000 people or 58% of people? Do we ever go, hi Festus, do we ever go back and check if any of our predictions were right? If we said, you know, we believe that 10,000 people are willing to pay $10 a month for this, were we right? How long did it take us to get to 10,000? And that's where I think it would be interesting, because then we might start to prove to ourselves that either our predictions are really good and we are right a lot of the time, or our predictions are not good. And why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep surveying people to ask if they would use this if we keep finding that we're wrong? I'm going to write that down. I'm still writing it down. Some of you know I'm working on a book right now, and I think this would fit in perfectly. So yeah, that's going to be there. Afzal, if you're still here, how am I doing? Does this make sense? Ultimately, and even my book already says this, now I'm just going to add to it, these are three separate specialties that very often people think overlap, but they don't necessarily overlap. A lot of UX people don't want to do market research. I don't, because I don't want to be just sending out surveys and making predictions. Or I don't want to ask people what imagery our advertising can show them so I can trick them into associating an emotion with a yogurt. So that's my personal take. Now, of course, people do these jobs, and these jobs are successful for companies and they bring them money. I'm not saying these jobs are bad or wrong. It's just not what I want to do. What's everybody eating or drinking this morning? What are y'all up to? Are we up to food yet? We might be between breakfast and lunch for most of you. This is late breakfast. This is office hours. Ask me anything. I'm usually here an hour. Once a month, I do this early one at 10 in the morning Italy time. Normally, all of our shows are 6:30 p.m. Italy time. So we'll be here tonight also with a special guest who's going to co-answer questions with me. You can send in questions for that. You can come back live. All of these shows are always archived on the YouTube channel. They're much easier to find there than on LinkedIn. So come on over and subscribe on YouTube, and these will be in the Office Hours playlist. Chai time. When isn't it chai time? What do you take in your chai? Milk? Coconut milk? Soy milk? Nothing? Abdul Bazit says, so this might simply mean marketing research might answer, what might our customers like? And UX research answers, what do our users do? I would say that's a little closer. I would say it's a little closer. So what do our users do now? And of course, do we have a sense of what they could do, what might streamline and improve their workflows, but without asking them to predict their future? LinkedIn user says, I think it's more a matter of asking what would be required to drive you to use this product. That's still market research and not UX research. When we ask would you questions, these are closed questions that do not take into account the set of required circumstances that would trigger the behavior we're seeking to trigger. Yeah, and I would still say that that is a market research question, because if I say, what would it take for you to buy 100 of these red cups? Now you have to have an answer for me. This assumes that you want this red cup. It assumes you want 100 of them. Very often these questions have assumptions built into them or are leading. It also assumes that there's a simple answer here. Very often, depending upon what you're selling, the answer is complicated. The answer is, well, first I have to check my company policies on this. Then I have to check with my manager to see if we have budget. Then I have to check with their manager and finance to see if I can get the budget to commit to that for 2 years. Like, if you really want to know what it's going to take someone to buy or use the product, you probably want to do the UX research, the generative behavioral research to learn what is that process? What does that decision making look like? Rather than what would make you user buy this thing? That's very marketing and market research. That's usually not UX. So Bowale has a question. So what do you mean opting out, Sobowale? I don't understand your question. Can you give me some more information there? I'm not sure what opting out means. And I know we have another question from Emma. We didn't forget you. We're still answering the old questions. And Chiwat, I see your question. I'm always happy to see you. Thanks for coming to that thing over the weekend. And I'm going to put your stuff at the end of the list so we can get to some of the other people. So, yeah, good question, and we'll get there in a moment. Chiwat's question is going to have to be the last one because we're nearly out of time for today. So questions are closed. Questions are closed. If you have more questions, come back later. Yeah, so hopefully that makes some sense with the whole thing. UX generally doesn't ask what would it take for you to use this or buy this, because it is assumptive, it is predictive, and we don't really know. And also very often we're giving people a general idea. What would it take for you to buy an app that helped you go surfing with your friends? You might go, you might give me an answer, but your answer might be different based on what that app ends up looking like. Very often in this type of market research, we're describing an idea to someone or mentioning the idea to them. We don't usually have the idea already built. We're trying to figure out if we should build it. And the problem is that we're asking people to make some sort of prediction based on something they can't see or use. They have to guess what it might be like and then guess if they would use it. Usually they imagine something that is great for them, so they say, yes, I would buy that, I would use that, because they dreamed up something that they would like. All right, our next question was, I'd like to build my portfolio with a focus on UI and product design. If I don't have enough to show, should I use inspiration or redesign existing platforms? Okay, so you're just going to do UI design. So here's the thing. To me, the best UI and product design is inspired by research. The hypothetically worst is I saw something and I made it better based on what I like or what I think would be good. That ends up accidentally looking like ego. It ends up looking like this service isn't good enough for me, so I'm going to change it to what I like. And hypothetically, if I worked for this company, that would now be what the whole world has to use. That can look a little bit me-centered. So I think, and also I've read that a few companies don't like when you redesign their stuff because they spend a lot of time and money designing that. And you're basically saying, here's where you suck. Now again, they might suck. You might be right. But some companies don't take that well and they say, you don't know anything about our business. Why are you redesigning our system when you don't really know what's going on here internally? You don't know who our target audience is. You don't know what our business goals are. What are you doing right now? So, of course, you can always make a dribble or behance that says, I don't like the way LinkedIn looks. Here's how I think LinkedIn should look. And everybody can go, wow, cool, yeah, great, thumbs up. But, that may or may not fly in a portfolio. In some cases, people are really still looking for a good thought process and sometimes to see if you've worked from any research or data. Otherwise, it tends to be, here's what I like. I made what I like. And that really wouldn't be UX. Sure, you can call it UI. Sure, you can call it product design. But it wouldn't be UX because no users were involved. UX is about user experience. If we're not including the user experience by researching and testing with users, then I typically call it web design. It wouldn't be UX design. So you can redesign existing platforms, but it's not UX design, and I would want to see your process and your reasoning. What are the steps you went through? How did you go about this? A LinkedIn user says, that is the point I was making. I think the assumption is the mistake. What is required to trigger an action or behavior is dependent on too many variables. As you pointed out previously, looking at what people are actually doing at present is far more okay, thank you, unnamed person. I'm sorry my chat system isn't putting up your name, but thank you. Sorry I misunderstood you earlier. I couldn't quite tell what side you were on there, so thanks for clarifying. So yeah, that's yeah, because I think we have, did we add what Abdul Bazit said? This might simply mean marketing research answers. Yeah, right, we talked about that. Emma says, agreed. I work in corporate, and it's more because our existing product isn't what I would do, because they're not user-centered. And again, you can't get caught up on what I would like better or what I think works. We really have to make sure that we are designing for the target audiences, the population. And if your portfolio doesn't tell that story, you might still be a good visual or UI designer, but I would be concerned that I would put you on a UX or user-centered project and you would go, but I designed what I like. And then I would go, no, this isn't about you and what you like. So I think that it really depends what skills you're trying to show, because we know that there's mostly two types of UI product visual designers. There are people who like to just be told what to do because then the work is concrete. You know what you're doing. You know what it takes to make that person happy. You do what they said. Then there are people who say, no, I want to solve problems. I want to think critically. I want to be able to try different things and figure out what is best for users. So there you go. LinkedIn user says the value of using empathy maps. You will never convince me that there is value in an empathy map. There is no value in an empathy map. And scene. So no, you don't need empathy maps, ever. You just need good insights and reporting and suggestions from researchers that help people understand who people are. Empathy is a fluffy thing that we really need to stop saying, because our company is here to make money. The more we talk about fluffy stuff that sound like feelings, the more we look like people from another planet. So be careful, be careful. We need to be talking about customer intelligence and risk mitigation. Understanding customers better and having better customer intelligence helps the business, and it's typically not going to be helped through an empathy map. We can certainly document people through other artifacts, and empathy maps tend to include a lot of guessing and role playing, and that's the wrong way to go. We're getting further away from the data if we are making assumptions about what people thought or felt. We don't know what they thought or felt. We know what they said or did. So be careful of claiming you know what another person thinks or feels. If someone says, I feel frustrated, that is something they said. I mean an empathy map derived from tangible research and hard data. I still don't want an empathy map. Do not want. Do not want at all. Zero empathy maps. I believe it is the wrong artifact and the wrong word. Yes, I want good research and hard data and strong evidence. I do not want an empathy map because I find that everybody ends up guessing. Well, people must feel worried because they did this thing. No, we don't know if they feel worried. I mean, is anyone here a woman? Hands up if you're a woman or identify as a woman. How many times in your life have you had someone say to you, oh, you seem upset, when you weren't upset? Or something like that. People are so bad at telling me what I feel for 50 years now that I do not want to see any research artifact that attempts to guess or assume what someone else is feeling or thinking, right? Oh, go Emma with dilemma. Yeah, okay, so I still didn't get zero empathy map. So, Bawali, you were supposed to tell me what your question meant. I don't understand your question. Would you advise opting out for UX instead of UI? Are you trying to ask if people should work in UX jobs instead of UI jobs? Or work in UI jobs instead of UX jobs? I don't get it. So I'm going to go with Chiwat's question first, and we'll circle back to Sobawale if we can get some further information there. And sorry to battle unknown LinkedIn person, but I feel very strongly against empathy maps. I just find that they're too meaningless and often guessed. All right. Chiwat says, speaking of what users do, any tips on how to research for something which the user only does probably once in a long time? I'm thinking specifically of how to do research for opening a business bank account. It's hard to do observational research for something like this. It would be unnatural to get potential users to perform it for us to watch. Okay, two main options here. I'm sure there's more than two, but two main options come to my mind right away. First of all, don't pick your users first and then ask them to go open a business bank account. Go to the bank and go watch people who happen to be coming to the bank today to do that anyway, or to ask questions about opening a business bank account. There might be questions and decisions that happen before the actual opening of the account. So number one, don't pick the users first. Go to the bank. And when you find out that people are there to talk about a business bank account, to ask questions or to open one, then see if you can get involved in that. See if you can say, hi, I'm a researcher from the bank. We're looking to make this process better. You know, are you comfortable with me listening into your conversation? I'll ask you questions after you're done. Please sign here that says it's okay for me to listen in. You can, if you're recording it, they have to agree to that. So number one, don't pick the participants first and then go, oh, they're not opening a bank account. Go to the bank and find those people and meet them and see how much of their process you can follow. Number two, if you are picking participants first, then you would screen. You would screen for, hi, have you opened a business bank account in the last 6 months? Let's make it relatively recent because then they're likely to remember some of what they did. I mean, the last time I opened a business bank account was 2018. I'm not going to remember that process very well. But if you can find someone who did it relatively recently, then there's a good chance they can speak to that process and remember some or all of their steps. Then you would want to be able to or you can always find people who plan to open a business bank account. Maybe you'll run a diary study with them. That's a third way. But back to my second way, you might, let me refresh my slidey things there. They've frozen. You could, so what I've had someone do in a research interview where I was the participant was they asked me about something that I probably do once a year, and it was, how do I create an online course? Now, of course, they can't watch me do that. That's something that takes me months to do. So what they did was they opened up a Miro board and they shared their screen. And they said, walk me through your process of creating an online course. And as I talked, they were putting up sticky notes of my process and a couple of sub notes underneath that. But of course, I could see these, so they're not going to write any notes that I shouldn't see. But they were mapping my process as I talked about it. And then afterwards, she was like, okay, let's take a look at this, see if there's anything you want to change or something you missed. And when we talked through it, I realized there were 2 steps that I missed. So she added those in. And, you know, is that perfect? No, but it will give you some sense of what that journey might look like, how long people spend on different aspects of it, and things like that. Chiwat says, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Edit this out. No, I don't edit the YouTube videos. Sorry. Oh, thanks, Wukash. Great to meet you. Thanks for coming by. Gerardo says that's a step in design thinking. Get to know your audience. Yeah, except design thinking is garbage. So please consider evolving from design thinking into full user-centered design or human-centered design. Design thinking on its own doesn't really require that we've done a good job getting to know our users and customers. And very often these are guessed at in group workshops. So be careful. Sobawale, let's finally get to their question, and then we'll circle back to unnamed LinkedIn user. Would you advise UX instead of UI? Me opting out from being a UI designer into UX designer. Okay, so that's really hard for me to answer because I don't know you. So I don't know what you're good at. I don't know what you would love to do in your career. I don't know what job you're likely to get. I would probably say it's easier to get some jobs that are really UI that pretend to be UX, but I can't tell you. Okay, thanks, Emma. Bye. Yes, design thinking lacks critique and get in the bin. Bye. Yeah, thanks, Emma. Good to meet you, too. I don't think I've seen you before. So I can't tell you what career you should pursue. They're both tough to get into right now, and I would tell you to follow what you love. If you really love the UI design and you don't love the UX design so much, don't do UX. If you love the UX design and you want to do UX and UI, do UX and UI. Do what makes your heart sing. The end. All right, let's go back to LinkedIn user as our last question. Sorry, I'm running late today, but I want to get everybody in because we ended up talking about empathy maps quite by accident. And let's put up that question. And that was, what would be a better artifact? I'm totally against guesstimating. I think that's dangerous. I think that having templates that we populate of what... Okay, so I can't tell if you're for or against templates. I'm against templates. And I think that ultimately you're really asking, I think, how do we deliver research insights and opportunities? To me, I work with stakeholders to figure out what is the most compelling way for them to get that stuff. Sometimes I'm making video clip montages, you know, better than an empathy map that says, I think 3 people felt worried, when we don't necessarily know that. What's more powerful is, here's a video clip montage of 20 seconds each of 6 people who all seem to be experiencing something negative while using our system. Boom, 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 boom. And then people go, oh shit, whoa. You know, it's hard to ignore that one. Prachi says, first time here, great listening to you while having an unhealthy amount of chai. Yeah, well, at least it's still midday for you and the caffeine can wear off. So switch to decaf, but good to see you here too. So I don't need an empathy map to help people understand what our potential or current users are going through. I can do that with video clips. I can do that with video montages. I can do that with some quotes, which I know sometimes quotes go on the empathy map, but I can do that with quotes. You don't need the empathy map because the empathy map has too much potential for garbage in. And I've never seen anybody say a UX designer, let's say I've never seen a UX designer say, it's time for me to start working on my designs. Let me go back and look at that empathy map. I'm not seeing these empathy maps used later. I've never seen a product manager say, I need to do some product strategy. Let me go check that empathy map. I think we have to find better ways to deliver stuff that sets the next people up in the assembly line for success. And sometimes we just have to ask them, what is that? In what format can I deliver you information that's going to be most helpful for what you're going to do with this information? A product manager might be strategizing and prioritizing, preferably with us, but very often not. A designer has to start doing information architecture or design. How can we deliver to them something that is more actionable? Can you include suggestions and advice in your PowerPoint or reports or documentation so that you're not just telling people, hey, there's things, but there's things, and I'm a smart, strategic person. Here's what I think you should do about those things. Not coming up with a solution necessarily, but still coming up with some suggestions or priorities. I think there's a lot of things you can do other than empathy maps. I've never made one in my life, and I never will, because to me, they just don't have value. You can absolutely conduct a fantastic project and never have made an empathy map. And if that's the case, then what do we need these for? You know, I can't imagine doing a project without some sort of report. Or very often my clients are asking me for an Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet of pain points, opportunities, trouble, frustrations, so that these can then be prioritized and worked on. Those Excel spreadsheets are very helpful, whether or not we imagine someone was worried or someone was frustrated. Doesn't matter. The shit is broken and we've got to fix it. Alexandra says, hi, Debbie, I've just discovered your channel. I find it fantastic. I have a question. Yes, you are too late for questions. Normally, I am here an hour and then we are done. But I'm going to be back in 7.5 hours doing the show again and taking more fresh questions. I would probably suggest asking it then. Only once a month do I do this one early in the day. So is it okay if we save that question to be the first question for this evening's version? Because that would be great. We would have a first question ready to go. But yeah, hopefully, person whose name didn't come up who's asking me about empathy maps, I do have to run. That is the end of the show. The show ended 7 minutes ago. Oh, news. Yeah, sorry, it's 6:30 p.m. Italy time. I'm not too sure where you are, but just convert Italy time. And that would be the way to go. But please do subscribe and join us here on the channel. I'm here every Tuesday, usually 6:30 p.m. Italy time only, to answer as many questions as we can fit into an hour. But unnamed LinkedIn user, sorry your name isn't coming through my system. I hope that you can please get in touch with me if you need any other help or advice about avoiding empathy maps. But start to think about, how are empathy maps being used later in the process? Are people really going back to them? Are they really actionable? Are people taking action because of them? Do they even have empathy because of them? Probably not. Your coworkers are probably still racist and assholey. The ones that were racist and assholey still are. So we didn't create empathy. And I find that if you want to create sympathy, show people video clips. Nothing's better than that. All right, I gotta run, but we will be back later to do the show all over again with totally fresh questions that you ask, plus a special guest who will be joining me. So I hope to see everybody later, or maybe on another Tuesday show in the future. Thanks, and see you later. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are